today we're doing a Woljif Brownfur Arcanist build, and this build is overall very fun to play. It gives some very nice utility options and a lot of versatility in some of his spells. Just to be clear, this is not unfair difficulty combat showcase. You shouldn't be turning your casters into dragons or your support into dragons on unfair difficulty. I lowered it just so I could show you the fun part of this build, but at a lot of times I did end up turning my pets into dragons and it was very effective. This build can do a lot more than turning things into dragons. It gives a lot of nice buffs you wouldn't be able to get otherwise early game, like +6 enhancement bonus to your stats, as well as increasing the buffs from reduced person, enlarged person, legendary proportions, and even being able to cast frightful aspect on other party members that wouldn't be able to otherwise. So let's get to the build. So for Woljif, starting at level 4, we are going to go for Brownfur Transmuter. There are two reasons for that. First is powerful change. This is going to be a nice boost for our transmutation spells, especially early game when they are the strongest. And later we get shared transmutation. This way we can give more powerful transmutation spells which usually have a range of self to our companions. So for ability scores, I like to go Dex, just so he can hit enemies more reliably, and intelligence isn't going to do too much for us. For skill points, we are going to go for Arcane Trickster later, so having for mobility, trickery and knowledge arcana is going to be important. For arcane exploits, Force Strike is a nice one to start with. You don't need to roll to hit, it's guaranteed, but if you want you can also go Sonic Blast. There are very few enemies who resist Sonic, so it's always a nice option to do damage when enemies have too many elemental resistance and you don't have a way to get through them. For spells, starting at level 1, we get a lot of really nice spells already. True Strike to help you get some hits in. Of course, Enlarged Person and Reduced Person are going to be our most cast spells. Hurricane Bow is really nice, but only later on when you can share transmutation spells of range personnel. This way you can boost your ranged damage dealers weapon damage die by quite a bit. If you see my Windwalk build, she doesn't get Hurricane Bow and this can help her a lot. Otherwise there's nothing really too important here. Magic Missile is always useful, Snowball sometimes can help, and Vanish is sometimes even needed to help your damage dealers hit for flat-footed AC and get some hits in on those boss mobs you find early on in the game. So here at level 13 we are finally going to go for Arcane Trickster. What we did before we got here was taking feats so we could hit from range more effectively. So we start with point blank shot and precise shot, followed by spell penetration and greater spell penetration, so we can start using ray spells. Unfortunately, we don't make use of his first two feats, as a Brownfur Transmuter really isn't very effective in melee. If you want to go for a dual wielding melee build, I do recommend going for Vivisectionist instead. We stop at Brownfur Transmuter at level 12 because we already got shared transmutation. For our exploits, I took Sonic Blast, as it is the least resisted arcane exploit type we have after Force Strike, and Acid Jet, as there are quite a few enemies who don't resist acid, some swarms, and Acid Jet is useful against them. But now we finally go for Arcane Trickster. Unfortunately, we won't be able to hit surprise spells, the Arcane Trickster's capstone ability, but we are going to go Arcane Trickster all the way to 20. For our skill points, now it doesn't matter what you choose, since we already have the Arcane Trickster requirements in 4 Arcana, 4 Trickery, and 4 Mobility. Feat, we take Accomplished Sneak Attacker, so we can do more damage. And for spells, we keep going for mostly transmutation spells. I'll show you what I got earlier levels. So level 2, I just went full on transmutation. You probably won't need all of those, you just take the ones that are more useful for your party. It's nice that with Brown for Arcanist, those spells are useful for a lot longer than they would be without the Brown for Arcanist, because a Brown for Arcanist can have those spells give you a +6 enhancement bonus. So even at late game, you can, instead of equipping a +6 strength belt in one of your strength based characters, you can instead give them some utility based belt and just cast bull strengths at a +6 strength instead. For level 3, there's not much in the transmutation school, so I just took Battering Blast so we can hit some enemies with force damage, which is mostly not resisted. Heroism is a nice buff, so are Greater Magical Weapon and Haste. At level 4, we finally get Enlarge and Reduce Person Mass. Those are very big for us, because this way we can save our Arcane Reservoir when casting Enlarge and Reduce Person. We don't need to expend 1 use for each cast of Reduce or Enlarge Person. We just expend 1 use, cast Enlarge Person Mass in everyone that needs it, and a second use to cast Reduce Person Mass on everyone that needs it. Now, with our 20 levels, let's go through the feats we took. We stopped at level 13 with Accomplished Sneak Attacker. Later we take Empower Spell, Meta Magic. Mostly our damage comes from Battering Blast, so we do want to make Battering Blast of higher levels, so Empower is a nice boost. Then we take Improved Critical Ray, and last we take Meta Magic Maximize Spell, again to use on our Battering Blasts. Here we reach a total of 4 sneak attacks from Arcane Trickster, +2 from our Eldritch Scoundrel, +1 from Accomplished Sneak Attacker, for a total of 7. So late game our damage is not that bad, as long as we can get sneak attacks in. Now let's see what we did for our Mythic levels. For Mythic levels, we start with the Enduring spells, just because we mainly are focusing on transmutation buffs and we want them to last longer. So we go Enduring spells at first level, Greater Enduring spells at second, Full Reservoir, just because I felt like I never had enough of my Arcane Reservoir to cast damaging exploits after I had expend all of them buffing my party. And then we go for Abundant Casting here. We take a break of the Abundant Casting lines so we can take Last Stand. I do think Last Stand is needed for unfair difficulty. Then we go for Improved Abundant Casting and Greater Abundant Casting. Only at level 8 we take Spell Penetration Mythic. Before this, we probably won't land too many ray spells because our spell penetration is not going to be very high, as we are 3 caster levels behind because of his first 3 levels into Eldritch Scoundrel. But we do have Full Reservoir, and we should have a lot of casts of our arcane exploits, which can do decent damage, can trigger sneak attack, and don't require spell penetration checks. So before level 8, you can use your Full Reservoir to do some damage. At level 9, we take Favorite Meta Magic. Now we should be using our ray spells more often. And last, we take Mythic Sneak Attacker. This way we just add a little bit more damage. Alternatively, you could take Improved Critical Mythic Ray, but I do like this consistent damage better for ray spells since their critical range is not that high. So now let's go over spells and what you can expect from Woljif. For our spells, we already went over the first few levels, but just to remind you, Hurricane Bow is really nice once you are able to cast spells of Transmutation Schools target personal on your companions. This way you can boost your ranged character's damage. At level 2, mostly what we have is Bull, Strength, Cat's Grace, Eagle Splendor, and so on. You probably won't need all of this, so you can find a place for Hellfire Ray like I did, I'm sure. I think I didn't take Owl's Wisdom, but mostly those are useful. You just have to access which is better for your party and which one you don't really need. At level 3, we have our most used damaging spell in Battering Blast and some nice buffs. Level 4, we have our favorite Meta Magic heightened spell Battering Blast. This only comes much later on Mythic rank 9 if I'm not mistaken, but previously you can use Greater Invisibility on your party and you still have Large Person Mass and Reduced Person Mass. At level 5, most of the game, you have your heightened spell Meta Magic Battering Blast in place of one of your spells, but the most useful one here is Elemental Body 2. Elemental Body 2, in my opinion, is the best transmutation spell to increase AC, so this is what I used in my tanks. The later Elemental Bodies doesn't give too much more since you get size increases, and size increases make decrease your AC, so a large creature has a -1 size bonus to AC. So if you are casting just for AC like I was, Elemental Body 2, Fire or Air are, in my opinion, the best options. At level 6, you have Elemental Body 3, but as I said, I don't use this much. I'd much rather just have Battering Blast in place of it. And here you can have the Bull Strength, Cat's Grace, Eagle Splendor and the others in their mass form. This saves slots on your Arcane Reservoir for damaging exploits or just to cast other transmutation buffs. And at level 17 we finally get, not level 17, at spell level 7 we finally get Legendary Proportions. This is an amazing buff. It becomes a +8 strength with the Brown Fur Arcanist, We also get Ice Body, which we are able to cast on others. It's a decent option for your tanks, combined with Elemental Body Fire. You won't have much trouble with that fire vulnerability. And of course, our favorite Meta Magic Heighten spell and maximize Meta Magic Battering Blast comes at level 7. And at level 8 we have Dragonkind 3 and Frightful Aspect. Dragonkind 3 is also a nice bonus to AC for your tanks and allows them to do some decent damage. Especially with the breath weapon against some swarms. You still fight some swarms even late game. But mostly I don't use Dragonkind 3 just because of the size of the dragon. I find it difficult to manage in some dungeons, and I really like Elemental Body 2 much better. Frightful Aspect, on the other hand, is a huge spell. Similar to Legendary Proportions, it's an +8 bonus to Strength, and it instantly makes enemies shaken. This way you can trigger Shatter defenses with your damage dealers. It's also really nice for ranged damage dealers because it increases their weapon size, increases their bonus to strength, which for composite longbows and for thrown weapons gets applied on damage. But it is only a one size increase, so you get only a -1 to hit, unlike Legendary Proportions, which is a -2 to hit. So it's a really nice middle of the road compromise if you want your ranged damage dealers to do more damage. So for Woljif, his biggest draw in this build is being able to cast spells of range personal on others. So as you can see, we can just turn our pets into dragons or even elementals if you so wish. This is both a nice boost to damage and to armor class you wouldn't be able to get otherwise. And aside from that, he doesn't do that much damage, but he can give some nice versatility on your equipment options. Two that immediately come to mind are found on Act 4. They are a Silence Belt and Belt of Bloodlust. Both are very strong options for belt slot, but Belt of Bloodlust is only a +4 enhancement bonus. With Woljif, you can make your spells that give enhancement bonus to stats give a +6 enhancement bonus. This way, you can equip Belt of Bloodlust without losing much on that lower enhancement bonus. For a Silence Belt, it is a +6 dexterity, but you may want to equip this on someone that is strength based, like I did on my main character Trickster build. I used a Silence Belt on that character to great effect, since it combos very well with high critical range and it gives a circumstance bonus which is really hard to find. But that character is strength based and this is a dexterity belt. So Woljif was instrumental in making this work, so I didn't lose much by going for a dexterity belt instead of a strength one. Now, being completely honest, I don't think this build is the best in way of min-maxing. It does get there, it got me there in a fair. It has some very nice utility and allows you some versatility in your other builds, but by itself this build is not very strong. I do think that if you want to go with the strongest build for Woljif, it would be an Alchemist. Either Vivisectionist, so you can make him a melee damage dealer, but I do believe a regular Grenadier or even Sensitizer are better. He can feed infusions with Alchemist and just like Arcanist can give some spells of target personal that no one else can, so can Alchemist. For example, he can give Elixirs of True Strike, which no other class is able to do. And he would also deal more damage as an Alchemist. So this build served me really well, and I had a lot of fun turning pets into elementals and dragons, even some of my characters in a few fights, but I don't think it's the strongest build out there for Woljif. Probably, if you want to go full power, an Alchemist will serve you better. But let me know what you thought of this build. If you ever played a Brownfur Arcanist, did you also have fun being able to turn pets and companions into elementals, dragons, and even use frightful aspects and other spells you wouldn't be able otherwise? Well, aside from that, if you have any improvements for this build, let me know. But that's it for this video, and until the next one, I hope you have a good time.